Hello, Michael Wolff. Welcome to the show, and thank you for being with us. How are you doing today?
I'm
I'm
good.
good.
And
And
yourself?
yourself?
I'm fine. I'm very excited, and then it's just like I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. I've been reading for your books and everything. I mean, you've been part of our show for the longest time. Our show exists for the last couple of years, and we've been talking about your podcast. We've been talking about your books. So today it's a great honor to have you with us. Um,
Well,
uh,
Well,
thank you
thank you
for
for
having me.
having me.
Oh, then you're most than welcome. To start, I want to go back to October 2024. I mean, we're talking about your podcast, and I remember doing an entire show about your podcast, your collaboration with the Daily Beast, and the fact that you were releasing never before heard a conversation with Jeffrey Epstein. Conversation in which he directly talked about his relationship with Donald Trump. What shocked me back then was neither the Harris campaign nor the mainstream media seemed to care. How do you explain that?
Well, I
Well, I
think
think
I
I
was.
was.
If you
If you
thought you
thought
were
you were
shocked,
shocked,
imagine
imagine
how I
how I
felt.
felt.
I
I
think
think it was
extraordinary, and
extraordinary, and
obviously,
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 from
from
where
where
we
we
are
are now,
now,
where
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 nobody
nobody
can
can.
get enough of this story, to going back to then, it's completely mystifying. Why was this not? Why did this not immediately become a significant issue in this campaign? And also, just prior to that, um, a woman had come forward to say that she was Epstein's girlfriend. She had been introduced by Epstein to Trump, and then Trump immediately started to manhandle her. And I mean,
Yeah,
she had one of those stories which also was like, okay, what why is that not a headline? Um, uh, we had this sort of double-barreled window into the Trump Epstein relationship. I mean, I don't think you could you there just was no way around not seeing this as an acknowledgement of a very significant relationship in the lives of both men.
yeah.
Trump with Epstein, Epstein with Trump. But as you say, it got almost no pickup at all. Crickets.
Yeah, and there was no pickup from the media and from the Harris campaign. It seemed just like the Democrats didn't want to run this story to to embarrass Donald Trump or whatsoever. That's another big thing.
Well, I think it was there's also another parallel thing going on, that everybody has had difficulty with this story, especially the traditional media. Now, actually, not everybody. I mean, it's a weird thing in which this has been a significant subject for many years on the internet, and a non-existent subject in mainstream media. So the mainstream media, their position on this. I mean, I don't know. I've had trouble understanding it. My conjecture is that once, because they had painted Epstein as such a stick figure, demonized him to such an extent that they could no longer use him as a witness against the president of the United States. And then additionally, I think in the post Me Too climate, there was no people had lost, especially the mainstream media, had lost the wherewithal to talk about these issues, other than not to talk about them.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's almost as if we had gone back to sex in the way we discussed it in the early 1960s, which is to say, we didn't discuss it. So the easiest way around this was just not to address it at all.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, but it's make a lot of sense. Let's talk about today. Do you still have well connected sources inside the White House?
Yeah, very.
All right.
Yes.
So what they are saying about the current situation?
Well, I think that uh, they're worried. I mean, but even within the White House, it's not as if you can openly discuss this situation. You can't discuss it. You can't strategize about it. You can't even really, in any professional sense, spin it. No less try to understand it and explain it. So it's a verboten subject. Um, I once was interviewing Trump, and his aides asked me to submit, just give us a rough idea of the topics you want to cover, and I gave half a dozen topics, including Epstein, and this was in 2021, I believe. And this aide said, "Listen, you can ask whatever you want, but my advice," this person said, "was that if you ask about Epstein, Trump will immediately end the interview. So if you want the interview to go on, I frankly would not ask that question." So it's not a subject anyone can discuss, but among themselves, or at least with outsiders, I know that one person who I know in the inner Trump circle said, I mean, we've always known that the bad boy period in Trump's life might be problematic, but now we're beginning to think he was much badder than we ever thought.
All right. So a couple of days ago, the Washington Post reported that using anonymous sources, that they were saying that is not a big deal, that everything was under control, that the worst was done now. So do you have the feeling that it's accurate, or they are still like on panic mode about the story?
No, I think they're in yes, they're in panic mode. Remember, a lot of these people have been with Trump through crisis after crisis after crisis, which one might have otherwise thought he would not survive. So I think everybody thinks, well, yes, this is another Trump moment, but it will pass. Um, Nevertheless, they're very cognizant that another shoe, many more shoes, might drop here, and the fact that that Trump sent his personal lawyer, who's also the number two in the Justice Department, Todd Blanche, down to the Florida prison to interview to find out what Ghislaine Maxwell knows, is also a sign that they are worried about this. Plus, a week later, she was moved to a much more comfortable prison,
Yeah. What's your take
which
on that?
I think they're engaged in a massive cover up. I don't think you can read this in any other way. It's a cover up in plain view. Um, and I'm sure that either she agreed not to tell what she knows about Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, or and perhaps both. She then agreed to say that to implicate others. Um, Bill Clinton I mean, that's always been the fallback. Not me, Trump says, it's Bill Clinton.
Yeah, yeah. So, talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, you have a very, very interesting theory about how that the birthday letter end up in the Wall
Yes.
Street Journal. Can you
Yeah,
tell
well,
us?
it's actually not my theory. It's a theory that comes from inside the White House, that as soon as that letter, this letter written by Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein on the occasion of his 50th birthday in 1993, hinting at secrets and a kind of just generally salacious letter, uh, effectively referencing their arrangement with their lives in pursuit of women. Um, and this the secret, I believe, that he references there was this girlfriend that they shared between them in 92, 93.
Or
But then the
the
other
common
point,
secret, you mean, right?
yes. But then the other point was that within the White House, they immediately recognized that this was a leak from the Maxwell side, from either from her brothers or lawyers, and they regarded it as, quote, a shot across the bow, meaning this was Ghislaine Maxwell saying she had this on Trump and she had more on Trump, so that they better immediately engage in a discussion with her.
Yeah, so it was almost like a kind of a blackmail there, and it's just like it was very public. I mean, it's not just the Wall Street Journal, but all everything they said the weeks before that, what the David Marcus, the lawyer, said. It was just like obvious that they were just trying to put pressure on him for probably a pardon or
Right.
something like that.
And successfully. I mean, so far she's been moved to a better prison. But if I had to say what's going to happen here, I would say that at some point in the not too distant future, uh, she will be given a pardon.
So
And I
when
go
you
back to
yeah.
yeah. Let me just go back to a point at which, and this was in one of my books, my book Landslide. Um, in the final days of the Trump administration, and that was a moment in which she was just being brought to trial. Um, Trump asked his staffers, "What do you think she might say? Should I think about pardoning her?"
So it was a topic back then. So meaning that it was always afraid that something that was bigger than one we have today will come out. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, this is a very significant issue in the life of Donald Trump. Some more than a decade, close to 15 years, in fact, that he spent joined at the hip with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, these guys were the best of friends.
Yeah, so let's go back to your own relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Can you walk us through how you ended recording over, I think it's over 100 hours of conversation with him,
Yes,
right?
exactly. Um, I had somewhat known Epstein. I worked at New York Magazine, and in 2004, he was part of a group of very wealthy men who tried to buy the magazine. And because I was kind of the lead writer at the time, I got to know him. I got to know all of these men. Um, and as it happened, yet another rich man came in at the end and outbid them. But so I knew Epstein, and then not long after that, his legal problems began. He went to jail, and um, and and I probably did not hear from him. I did not hear from him until after he got out of jail. As a matter of fact, I ran into him in the pool at the Paris Ritz. Um,
Wow.
um, he was with two girls, as we say, not his daughters, and they were swimming, and we got to talking again. And then, not too long after that, and this would be in 2014, he called me up and asked me to come over to his house, the largest private residence in Manhattan, a kind of mind boggling place, and for a cup of tea. And then he proposed that I write something about him. Clearly, he was trying to pursue his rehabilitation, social rehabilitation after his time in prison. And I said, I'm probably not. I'm probably not going to be able to do that. And he said, yeah, he laughed and he said, well, you don't have to decide. Why don't you just, we can have we can have tea some more times and we can talk together and you can decide whether whether I found him an interesting story or not,
Yeah.
and whether I found him open and honest. And then he also said, that he had a lot of people came to his house, and he would invite me when he thought that there were people there who would be of interest to me. And we sort of did this, and it was of interest, and his story was compelling. Um, but then, on top of all of that, in 2015, Donald Trump started to run for president, and I started to write about this. And I found Epstein, and I didn't really know or knew very little about his prior relationship with Trump, but I found him incredibly informative and insightful about Donald Trump. Extraordinarily so. And so he was very helpful to me on that front. And then he became friends with Steve Bannon, the other person. I mean, I think that they're the two people I know who are most insightful about Trump are Jeffrey Epstein and Steve Bannon. And suddenly they were together. And I was privy to some of those conversations. So this was, again, extremely helpful to me in writing about Trump. And then this led up to 2019, when when he was rearrested. And in fact, he was at his house in Paris on Avenue Foch, um, and as he came out of the house to go to the airport, he's getting into his Maybach, and he's calling me, and he says, to arrange to have breakfast with me on the following morning. This was Saturday, on Sunday morning, but he arrived back in the United States, and as the plane landed, was immediately arrested. So we missed our breakfast.
All right. So you never agreed to write a book about him. I mean, it was just like you had all this conversation with him, but you were never sure about doing something else, right?
Right, right. I mean, I began to think in the. I mean, I don't know what I was exactly thinking. What I was most immediately thinking was that he was so helpful to me in terms of my book and then books about Donald Trump.
So, of course, everybody, and if we go back to October 2024, it's just about the tapes. Can you tell us what is in those tapes beside Donald Trump? What he's talking about? When you spend so
He's
many hours with him.
he it's basically a window into someone's life. I mean, it is the story of Jeffrey Epstein, an extraordinary story, rather, um, of how he came, as was basically quite certainly not rich, lower middle class, if you will,
Hmm.
in his rise to um, to great wealth and great status of knowing extraordinarily powerful and influential people across the globe. And many of those people who would come to Epstein's house, I have met. Some I've even become friends with. So I mean, just one of those stories, a story about a single individual, who has come to um, um, be something that that seems to defy explanation. And so I have some of that explanation. Um, mean, Epstein. I mean, other parts of that story I don't have. Epstein was, I would say, in hindsight, very compartmentalized. In fact, I know little about the crimes he's been accused of
Yeah.
committing. Um, I know something about his long legal battle, but that part of his life, which I guess in hindsight I now see as a kind of fetish that he went deeper and deeper into.
Yeah.
But I don't personally know much about that, and he said very little about that.
Earlier, you said that Donald Trump was a big part of his Epstein life for like maybe 15, 17 years. We don't know exactly, but for I mean, a very big time.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
so
exactly.
did he talk to you about his relationship with Donald Trump beside what was already known about this the topic?
Yeah, yes, an enormous amount. I mean, they spent a great deal of time together. They these were two guys looking for women, girls, on a constant basis. Their obsession was models, 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 supermodels, um, um, runway models, girls who just hope to be models. I think they both shared this, what would we call it? Obsession, fetish, notion of what a perfect woman was, a perfect girl was. Um, and they pursued this relentlessly. They started model agencies, invested in model agencies. Trump owned these beauty pageants. Epstein was involved with Victoria's Secret, the business, and with the models in the business. This was a kind of true north of their lives. Models were regarded for them as proof of their status.
Yeah. So, do you remember and do you want to share with us, I mean, something specific, what he told you about Donald Trump, about, his definition of who was Donald Trump, his secrets or whatsoever?
Well, once he defined Donald Trump, and this was kind of coming from Jeffrey Epstein particularly, but it kind of gave me a shiver. He said, um, Donald Trump has no scruples. Um, and this was involved with. I think that Epstein, even Jeffrey Epstein, regarded the way Donald Trump treated women as reprehensible. He used to tell the story about that Trump had again an obsession about sleeping with his friends' wives, and then Epstein would describe the method by which he did this.
Yeah.
Um, there was also, they broke up. In their friendship ended in 2004, and it ended over a real estate deal. Epstein believed himself to be the high bidder of a house in Palm Beach, bidding $36 million for this house. He brought his friend Trump over to advise him on how to move the swimming pool. Trump immediately went behind Epstein's back and bid $40 million for the house. Epstein believed that Trump or Epstein knew that Trump did not have $40 million. Therefore, Epstein concluded that Trump must be fronting for someone. And he believed he was fronting for a particular Russian oligarch who, in fact, less than 2 years later, bought this house that Trump had paid $40 million for $95 million, which is a kind of red flag set up for a money laundering deal. But Epstein, believing that this was a money laundering deal, started to threaten Trump with lawsuits and to go to the press. Um, and at that point, Epstein's legal problems began, and he believed that it was Trump who notified the Palm Beach police that there were this constant parade of women and often young girls into Epstein's house in Palm Beach. Trump would have known this because he had known that this was going on for many years, and at various points. Um, 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 as a matter of fact, I have Epstein would show a set of pictures of Trump around Epstein's pool in Palm Beach with some of the girls that Epstein would ultimately be accused of abusing.
Yeah, you just talk about, I mean, one side of the story I find very, very compelling. I understand why people focus on the, the wonderful secret, the woman, the models, the sex, and everything else. But to me, I used to be an investigative journalist. I mean, I am on my side. I publish books too. I mean, in France. But anyway, and for me, to me, it's just one piece of the story. I think maybe I'm wrong that the real story seems to be about the money. Money is power. I don't see these guys being friends for like 15, 17 years and not talking about money. It's another thing. Woman,
No,
money.
yeah, very much. They were each involved with the other's business. Epstein described how he helped Trump avoid a major tax bill. Actually, helped him essentially hide income. Um, he was he was Trump's businesses went bankrupt during this period in which they were friends, and Epstein knew an enormous amount about the ins and outs of that. Um, they were not only guys hunting women together, but they were also guys both looking for an easy buck together.
Yeah, and back then, I mean, I know that we still have a lot of question about how Jeffrey Epstein made his own money. I mean, as you said, he's coming from a middle class background, and suddenly he has, I mean, over 500 million, something like that. And but his job was to help people like Leon Black and over very wealthy people in New York to avoid paying less taxes. So
Well, I
yeah,
think there was that. There was um, he once said to me, he said, I run a reverse Ponzi scheme. In a real Ponzi scheme, you make money appear to exist when it doesn't exist. In my version of a Ponzi scheme, I make money that does exist disappear.
oh,
And his example was that if a wealthy man gets divorced and can hide $100 million, then he saves $50 million. Um,
yeah,
I think he was also involved with many regimes around the world of dubious legitimacy, um, regimes that had a hard time getting um, um, establishment advice on what to do with their money, either the money they owned individually or for their dubious sovereign funds. Um, Epstein was, for a period, quite close to, for instance, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, so follow the money, as they said. Yeah, and especially, I mean, if we go back to Donald Trump back then, I mean, it was just like he was struggling with bankruptcies. I mean, he couldn't get a loan from banks. We need to remember that, and he was just like always in need of cash, cash, cash. And it's when he bought the Maison de l'Amitié. I mean, the one you were talking for 41 millions, and I always thought that it was something that will be like a very good topic of investigation, and to see if Jeffrey Epstein was right about him being a front for something else. I want to go back to Steve Bannon. So it's 2017, I think, when he started to spend a lot of time, as a matter of fact, apparently a lot of time with Epstein. And you said earlier something that is very interesting, that the fact that both of these guys, they had a common bond, that they hate Trump back then, or they didn't like Trump back then. Um, do you have an idea about what Steve Bannon was really after when he started to talk to Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, I mean, I do think that what united them were their feelings about Donald Trump, and these were both on both men's part obsessive feelings. The joy between them of talking about Donald Trump, of analyzing Donald Trump, of dissing Donald Trump was intense. Um, and Yeah, when I was there when they met, and the first thing that Bannon said to Epstein was, "You were the only person I was afraid of during the campaign," meaning the 2016 campaign, because Bannon believed that Epstein knew the Trump secrets, or many of them. And so they became close friends, closely bonded. I think also, meanwhile, Steve Bannon is always interested in befriending people with money who then might support him or fund his various activities, which I believe that Epstein did. But I think the real nature of the relationship was that they had this mutual interest, which was Donald Trump.
So you don't believe Steve Bannon's story when he said that he was filming a documentary?
Well, not only do I not believe it, I know it not to be true because I was there. Um, it was there is no question, and actually I have this all on tape, um, that it was that it was a plan to help Epstein go on a national television show and do a kind of mea culpa, and try to somehow, by admitting what he had done, um, get a level of sympathy. And Bannon offered to be the one who would tell him how to do this, who would actually instruct him about how to go on a television show. And in order to do this, he brought in cameras and a sound man and cameraman, and then did a mock television interview with Jeffrey Epstein, and freely talking all the while about this being media training, about this is how he would have to appear, about how if he did it this way, he's going to look that would not be a good look, so he has to do it this way. There was even a point in which they're talking about about whether or not Epstein should wear glasses when he goes on television.
But meaning that Steve Bannon doesn't own the tapes, right?
Well, and on top of this, Jeffrey Epstein paid for this. So yeah,
Okay.
Steve Bannon does not own the tape. I mean, let me say that I am actually personally very fond of Steve Bannon. He has been awfully helpful to me. Every time I've been with Steve Bannon, I've been with him a lot, has been a worthwhile and even pleasurable occasion. He's very smart. He's very funny. And I think that, like everybody, after Jeffrey Epstein died, and if it came out that you were a friend or a colleague or an associate of Jeffrey Epstein's, you were your reputation was significantly damaged. So I can only assume that Steve panicked. And by the way, this was my fault. This came out, Steve's relationship with Bannon and the fact that he helped him in this media training came out because I wrote about it. Steve was not happy about this, and but I think he panicked and said, "Okay, well, I was making a documentary." Okay, he wasn't making a documentary. He was doing something to help his friend Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, I mean they're interesting. We're almost done there, so let's go back to the White House now and Trump now. What is his exit ramp there? And do you think? I mean, you were talking earlier about the fact that he survived so many scandals, including January 6th, as example. Do you think that he will he will do it again there?
I mean, I know, because I've been through this so many times. Never underestimate Donald Trump. I mean, his shamelessness, his audacity, his absolute willingness to lie and deny, um, and intimidate people who would say otherwise is extraordinary. So I would never say that he can't get out of this, but I do think that this is a hard one. This shadow, the Epstein shadow, will hang over him. The Epstein story never dies. It always comes back. It comes back just because I think the fundamental questions, never get answered. So, I would say it probably will not bring Donald Trump down, but it's an incredibly damaging story to him.
And do you get the feeling? I mean, I think it's what you said earlier that other things will come out about this
Well, very,
relationship.
very, very possibly, very likely. I mean, things come out now all of the time, so I think that there's always an attention to that. And and Trump and the Trump White House are in their strategy now is to sue the media. If you make that connection between Trump and Epstein, you get a lawyer's letter and you get a lawsuit, 10 billion, 20 billion, whatever they're suing. And so I think that's their aggressive response to this: intimidate, intimidate, intimidate.
It's they're interesting. But what about you? You own book. I mean, what about those tapes? Do you think? I know I've still have a hard time understanding why you are not able to publish them. I know that it's not up to you. Okay, I understand that. But do you think that that might
Well, I
change
have a
now?
hard time. I have a hard time understanding that too. But these tapes have been offered to almost every major media outlet. In both the U.S. and the U.K., and no takers. So will that change now? Well, I don't know. I'm trying to see if it's changing now. It hasn't yet changed, but obviously in this new climate, you would think that it would change. I will let you know.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I know that we have a chat now live, and people are just like they want to thank you for your kindness and for being with us today. And it was, I mean, it's a big honor. So thank you very much. Keep doing what you do, and I'm looking forward for your next book, whatever the topic will be. As I said earlier, I mean, your books on Trump are very interesting, but the one you did on Rupert Murdoch is it's something that people should read, because it's so key today to understand U.S. politics, to understand the power of Fox News. So thank you very much again, Michael, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Great. Thank you.
All right, bye bye.